So I'd like to start with three different scenarios of job seekers. I have been loyal to my company for 20 some odd years, and now I've lost my job. What advice can you give me for getting my next job?
Well, I think that first of all, you've obviously honed your skills well. So I think that's something to take advantage of and to build on. I think that if you've been in your role for 20 years, you're probably not going to be looking for something totally different than what you have been doing. So I think the key is to really understand the strengths that you've developed, the value that you bring to the table, and an understanding of where you can take that which you've honed so well and do something with it and sort of be your next step, if you would. But 20 years of experience is positive, and I think that you should feel good about it and then do something with it. And what you do is you look for other companies that are out there who are doing something similar to what you have been doing, and see if you could sort of explain to them why you bring value to the table. The interesting thing is that there are so many new startups today that you can take somebody who has been with a company for 20 years, and the initial reaction is that the only place that they can be effective is in a large, formal company. Not really the case. I mean, I look at that person as someone who could bring value to a brand new little puppy of a company and take what they've learned and sort of apply it to this startup who needs as much information as possible in day one. So I think you could go in many directions, and it could be a good time for you. I think the trick is to look at it in a very positive fashion.
I'd like to give you a scenario. I am just
Okay.
graduating from college. I am interested in media, but I don't really know what's out there. How do I get my first foot in the door?
Yeah, that, by the way, is a question that I get all the time. And I get it from longstanding clients who ask if I could spend some time with their kids who are graduating college and are not quite sure what to do. And I always make sure that I make time for that because I appreciated when my kids graduated college and they weren't quite sure what to do, that people took the time. And so I make sure I do also. Um, well, I think that if they're interested, if they have a broadly defined interest, and we've been talking about media and media related, then I think they have to look at what really comprises that industry. And in industries such as media, it has some very clearly definable elements to it. It has a creative piece, it has a pure business piece to it, it has a technology piece to it, it has a futuristic piece to it, and there are probably a couple of other pieces that I'm not just putting on the table. And I think it's a matter of looking at who and what you are and really where your passions are, and then seeing if you can take those passions and those many skills that you've developed up to this particular point. And I would go right out and just sell yourself like crazy. And people are willing to listen. I think you have to have a story, and I think you have to convey that enthusiasm and that passion, but that has value. So I think it's a matter of sort of being aggressive, looking around. We're all internet skilled, and most companies have positions that are available that are on webs that are of their business. Sort of get yourself out there and get in play, and it's all about relationships and conveying your interest, and you'd be surprised availability if you just go out and seek it.
Another scenario. I have been working for a print publication or a newspaper or something that might be termed older media, that may not be in the digital world as of now. And I'm seeing the writing on the wall, there are cutbacks. How do I make a transition into something that has more longevity?
Yeah, that's a tough scenario. And it is a real situation. So it's not something that you're just manifesting. Uh, that has happened. And if I could just build on that a bit and give you a comparative to that, but not leave that, we have that situation, which is old line media, if we would, which is, and we'll call that print media. And print media could be magazines, and it could be newspapers, and it could be books in media. It could be a lot of things, but it's print-based. So we have that old line, and then we have old line actually video. And hard to believe, but something like film and television is old line video. So you've asked the question about print, but you could have asked the same question about old line video. How do you take that experience and sort of convert it into the newest spaces? And that's not easy either. I will say this, after having looked at both, print was very late to the game as far as accepting the fact that there was going to be another world. And so people who were with print were late getting into opportunities. And for some reason, print people and the mentality of print was always protect the integrity of the brand. And so they were reluctant to look at the newer technologies and the newer ways of doing business because they felt that it somehow tarnished the brand and the brand would take a hit. At least old line television or film and radio were willing, in a more creative sense, to look at the newer ways of communicating the message or the content. And so they jumped into the digital universe a lot more willingly and a lot faster than print. Having said that, I will give you an example of someone who was in print, who I know personally, who made that transition. And they were in a, without naming it, a local newspaper. We don't have that many left, and it was a pretty name publication. And they were in the editorial section. And the newspaper itself said, you know what, we have to somehow, we're losing readership, we're losing advertising dollar, we have to do something. And in this case, he was astute enough to see where within the publication they were willing to be creative, be at risk, and he jumped into it. And he jumped into a virtual reality incubator within the publication and learned a great deal, established a name, and lo and behold, was contacted by, without saying who, one of the top 3 companies probably in the world in the digital universe to join them. So it can be done, but you have to be willing to, in some instances, if you don't have the internal experience set, to sort of take one step back in order to get 2 steps forward. And it's not going to come to you. You really do have to go out there and seek it, and just sort of put yourself out. It's not anything magical. It can be done. People are always looking for creativity. They're looking for innovation. They're looking for the next potential technology. So I think you can do it. Not easy, but you have to go out there, and you can't sort of bemoan your situation and feel sorry for yourself and feel that you've been left behind. You got to sort of run a little faster and catch up with the marketplace, but it's doable.